All right, sweet pea. No, sweet pea. Let's say hello. Hello. Welcome to Sunday school. I am Miss Wesley, and I am so glad you've taken the opportunity to click on this video. Whether you are a returning viewer or brand new, I hope that you enjoy our lesson. If you are unfamiliar with my Sunday school class, I do 10-week lesson plans, and they're all themed. And our last lesson plan, we learned about journeying with God. And this one, we have been learning all about Paul. The Paul of, is it Tartarus? Yes. We are on our 5th lesson. And instead of 10-week lesson plan, 10 weeks of lessons, this one is about a 5 to 6 lesson. This one, I'm doing 6 lessons in this one. The next lesson is an optional one. You do not have to do it, but it will be more historical than what you would find in the Bible. However, it is going to be an awesome lesson. But let's stick to this current one. We're going to get shipwrecked with Paul. So last lesson we learned about Paul preaching at the Mars Hill. And this one, it takes place after that, quite a bit after that. I'm skipping a whole bunch of chapters. There's a bunch of other stories about him in the Bible. If you wish to read about Paul's and other disciples' adventures, you can find it in the book of Acts. And I do recommend you read this book in the Bible. Of course, I recommend you read all the books in the Bible. However, if you wish to learn about what happened after Jesus and how the disciples and how everything was spread, Christianity was spread throughout everywhere. The book of Acts will help you in that. And then, of course, you can further your knowledge by looking into history itself. Do some discernment and go deeper, because sometimes what they say happened isn't actually how it happened. There's been some changes to fit what people wanted it to say. But that's with anything. Sometimes it doesn't fit the way they want it to go, like the Bible itself, and they put their own interpretation on it, and it's not exactly what happened. But let's go into this story. It is in chapter 27 in the book of Acts. However, I'm going to give you some back history before we go into it, because if I just say the reason that Paul got shipwrecked, there is a lot to go into that story. So, in the chapter before it, in the chapter 26, Paul gets called into trial. And because he made some remarks about the emperor at that time, Emperor Nero. Yeah. Now, Nero, he was crazy. And he did some unscrupulous things that were bad. And so Paul made some comments that he did some nasty acts, and this was viewed as treachery, because Paul was a citizen of the Roman Empire. Therefore, he was held to the same same laws that would govern if you were to commit treason in Rome against the empire. It would be no different than any country that you're a citizen in. Even though you have your own culture, if you were born in that country, you become a citizen of that country, right? No different with the Roman Empire at that time. If you were born into the Roman Empire and you were a free citizen, you paid homage to both your culture and the Roman Empire. So, when Paul made these comments, they were taken as treason, and he was brought before court. Not only had he been seen as being treacherous to the Roman Empire, but also his own culture, because at that time, of course, the Jews were not acknowledged, not the Jews themselves. The temple and that part of their religion was also their government. So the priests were not acknowledging Jesus. In fact, they were teaching that it was deception and that he was just a prophet and Jesus didn't actually die and rose again. It was all make-believe. So Paul was teaching against what the synagogue was saying at that time, what the temple was saying at that time. So that was also viewed as treachery. However, he could still say the comments. He wasn't actually saying that you should go and destroy the temple. He said Jesus destroyed the temple. Anywho, so Paul was taken up before the synagogue. I mean, not the synagogue, but before the magistrates at that time. And he was put on trial, and he gave a report of what he's done and how he got to where he was, how Jesus came to him one day as he was going. He gave his whole story. And he almost convinced the person to turn away and come to Jesus. And also that he was innocent of such crimes that the temple was putting on him. And that Felix would let him go if he had not made remarks about the Emperor Nero. But because Paul did that, he was found guilty, and he had to stand before Nero himself to get judgment for his remarks. So, and to be put into prison. So Paul was sent to Rome to stand before Nero. That's where our story for Shipwrecked comes in. So, a centurion is put in charge of Paul. Centurions at that time were the best of the best. Okay? That means they didn't just put any soldier in charge of Paul. They put like a Navy SEAL type guy in charge of him. Alright? There was nobody going to get to Paul. So they boarded a prison ship in passage to Rome with a whole bunch of other guards. They didn't want to make sure Paul got to his destination. He was supposed to stand before Nero to answer for his crimes. So they boarded this ship. The ship and they started their journey. They came to one port, and they had to change. I believe they had to change ships. This ship came from Alexandria. Fascinating place, Alexandria. But that's a history lesson. Anywho, so they boarded this ship, and they began their passage. They rounded Crete. They rounded the one beside of it. And they came to a place called Haven's Place. Now, it was winter time, and of course, in the winter, the seas get mighty choppy. They get treacherous and dangerous, and it's best not to be on them in the winter. And Paul makes the comment, if we proceed, it won't go well for us. I foresee that there was something bad will happen to the ship and to us upon it, and the people upon it. I don't think we should be going. But the centurion, believing the captain and the crew, boarded the ship anyways for passage. So this was during the time of fasting. So everybody was fasting on the ship. And all of a sudden, a huge storm kicks up. and they get stuck in this storm. This wasn't just an ordinary storm, okay? This kind of just followed them as they went through. And I mean, it tossed the ship through and to and fro. It was, I mean, and they had been fasting for 14 days. And this thing would not let up. And finally, one night, Paul stands up and says, and the angel of the Lord came to me and said, none of us will die on the ship. We will lose the ship. The ship will, tear apart, but none on the ship will die. And so the waves are tossing them to and fro, and people are wanting to abandon the ship. They let down the rowboat to escape the ship, and Paul's like, no, do not get off the ship. As long as you stay on the ship, you will live. So everybody stays on the ship. They drop their anchors. The place is being tossed through and fro. And Paul's like, hey, we should probably, let's break fast and let's eat something. So they eat. And they go to sleep. Well, the next morning, I don't think nobody slept on that ship that night. As the waves are tossing it through and fro. And the next morning, they wake up and it's all clear. They had lost the back of their ship. And, they had quite a bit of damage, but not one person had died. And in front of them was an island. So they made for a stream that went towards the island, and they got stuck on a sandbar before they could get to the island. So they were going to kill all the prisoners on the ship because they didn't want the prisoners to jump off and go to the island for fear that they would escape, swim away. But the Centurion's like, no, I have to get Paul to Nero. So no one's going to kill him. And nobody's going to get away. So they let everybody off the ship and everybody got to the island. Not one life was lost. Not one person I don't think anybody was really injured. They probably were seasick. But everyone got off that boat safely. No one was killed. And everybody got to the island. I mean, there's more to the story about what happens on the island. However, I'm going to stay with this story because this is where the lesson is. See, they could have listened to Paul at the beginning. He knew what he was talking about. But they chose to go ahead anyways. And they came up to danger. And God didn't have to save their lives. But Paul had to stand before Nero. That was God's intentions, that he would make it to the emperor. I mean, it's when life's happening, and sometimes we are told things and we tell people, hey, if you head this direction, something's going to happen that don't feel right. It feels like something bad's going to happen. God's telling me something bad's going to happen. These are people in our own lives and we are connected to them. Sometimes it's a family member. Sometimes, it's your mom and dad. And you say, hey, mom and dad, I don't think this is the right decision. And you're stuck, or your church, you tell the church, hey, church, I think this is wrong. It feels wrong. God's telling me something's not right about this. And they go anyways. Sometimes we get a little ahead of God and we don't take time to listen to what he's saying. Sometimes we listen to what we're saying. We don't see the storm in the distance. We think it's all going to be okay. And sometimes we need to listen to the person that's warning us, saying, hey, God's telling me that this is wrong. But we choose to ignore it. And so we make the choice and we get on the ship. We could go on that journey because we have to get to our destination. We see that destination, that's where we want to be. And all of a sudden a storm kicks up and we are in the worst time of our lives. Everything seems to be going wrong. If only we had listened to God in the beginning, right? And we feel like everything's out of control. There's no way that this can be righted. And it feels like you're going tossed to and fro, back and forth, and you want to get off that ship and abandon it. I mean, it seemed good at the beginning. It seemed a little rocky, but even when we are at that moment and in that storm that was sometimes our own creation, our own choice led us to this storm, led us to what seems like disaster, but God steps in. And even though we're still going to get the damage, we're still going to take that hit. Like Paul on that ship, they still had to go through the storm. They still ended up with damage. But not one person was lost. In life, you're still going to have to go through that storm. You made the choice. Or we made the choice. We're still going to have to go through that storm, but God steps in. And even though every life should have been lost, God says, no, I'm in control. Our ship might be damaged, but not one life shall be lost. And you end up off course, but safe. It's so wonderful to know that no matter what happens, no matter what choice we make, if we put God in there, everything's going to be okay. Because God is always in control. Even in the worst storm of our lives, God is still in control. Paul was heading to the worst possible scenario. And yet, instead of wishing ill upon the people around him, he wanted to save them and their lives. They put him in a horrible situation. And yet, he wanted God to take care of them. So, in our own lives, no matter what happens, even if we make the wrong decision, God can see us through that decision, and sometimes we learn through it. We become stronger people. We become better people. What was meant to destroy us builds us and brings us closer to Him. It might look like we're shipwrecked. But even in a shipwreck, we can rebuild. We become better, stronger, and lean not unto our own understanding, but actually learn to listen to God more. So, that brings us to our project. I hope, that's the lesson part. We're going to do our project real quick. If you're a Sunday school teacher, this is your project, kids. Super easy. Like, really easy. And the kids enjoyed it while my class did. Anywho, I'm going to show you some of their... Anywho, all you do... I'm going to do this real quick before I show you the cards. Okay. You take about a piece of paper about the size of a, let's say a name tag. And, they just need a marker. It can be whatever color they want. Do not use paint because it takes too long to dry. You can use crayons if you want, if you have a younger class. Although this lesson, you might have to simplify it a lot more. Alright, and then you're going to put on there, God is in control. Okie dokie. And that's what you're going to put on the card. I made mine a little bigger so you can see it. So, I don't know. I have to get really close so you can see it. So, you put on there, God is in control. And then the kids can decorate it however they want. I'll show you some of my kids' designs. See, they did this. She did really good, I'm going to say. And so they decorate the cards. And then you laminate them. I'd show you how to laminate, but I have misplaced my laminator. I mean my laminate. You can buy the cold kind that you just peel and stick, you know. I have misplaced mine because my workroom is a mess right now because I'm rearranging everything. Actually, I'm arranging everything. It's been a mess for a long while now. You know how it goes. You'll get to it when you get to it. And so, and here's another one. So they could decorate it however they want, and then you laminate the cards. You could puncture holes in them, or they can just leave them like this. And it's just a reminder for them. Or if you're an adult and you need the reminder, sometimes I need the reminder and stick it up in my, mirror or something in my car. That God is in control. Yeah. Even though in the worst times in our life, in this world, God is still in control, and He has never let it go, ever given up His control. And He still has ultimate power and absolutely limitless in what He can do. It is not God that has changed ever. It is our mindset of what God can do. We have put limits on God, and we should take them off. Because He is truly, absolutely limitless. He is all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-doing. And it is us that have changed in our thought process. So, that is this project. Super easy, like I said. Kids enjoyed it. They can make more than one, however they want to do it. And then you just laminate them, give it to them the next week, and easy peasy lemon squeezy. So, that's this week's lesson. If you want to join me next time, we'll be learning what happens to Paul after he gets off the island. So, and then we'll be going in. Well, then we have a bonus. Well, it's a special edition lesson, and then we'll be hopefully going into our fable unless God throws another monkey wrench into things and changes everything again. This was not my original plan to teach about Paul. I have said this before. God said to teach this lesson plan, so that's what I did. I enjoy this lesson plan. I've taught it to my Sunday school class, and they enjoy it. Learning about Paul and all his adventures. So, I haven't even done all his adventures. He had quite a few of them. He and Peter got into a lot of, orneriness. Okay, not orneriness, but, he was quite a interesting individual. At such a transition. I mean, really, honestly, read the book of Acts, and his journey is an interesting one. So, I'm going to leave you there with this lesson, and hopefully you tune back in. Sometimes I don't ramble on so much, but I like to, sometimes I'll repeat something over and over again in a different fashion, because sometimes I go a little too complicated and things need to be simplified. What I'm trying to do is make it easier for you to understand at whatever level you are at, and however you process things. Sometimes words really do make a difference in how someone perceives things. I'm speaking from personal example. Some days I'm not paying attention and you can say something in a different way and, oh, that makes sense now. So I'm going to leave you here, and I hope you tune back in with me or check out some of my other lessons. I love you guys. God loves you, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. So remember, no matter where you are in this life, you are completely and utterly loved. Goodbye.